We're connected with Bapak Dicky Budiman, an epidemiologist from Griffith University, Australia. Good morning, Pa Dicky. It's always a pleasure to have you right here at the C Morning Show. We know it's going to be a fruitful discussion. Now, as Hans and I said before, there is no more quarantine, especially for Bali. It has become a trial for the Indonesian government, and now is currently preparing and also aiming for, making our country transitioning to an endemic. So, in your views, Pak Dicky, is our country ready for it?
Yeah, we have to be ready, but not at this time, because as we seen from the data, our, let's say, case fatality rate still above 1%. It's very serious because mortality rate is one of the indicator for severity of the outbreak. And even one single digit number of fatality is still very represent many aspects that we fail to detect from the beginning of the disease. And around 30 province in Indonesia still has test positivity rate above 5%. It's mean very far, even some of them has 30%. It's mean higher than what the WHO recommended, which is should be below 5%. And if we categorize in manageable or it's in very good condition, so it means should be below 1%. And of course, this the many loose restriction in many countries, including in Indonesia, is not represent that the pandemic is already over.
Correct.
Or the decreasing of cases, it doesn't mean the virus is already disappeared. It's not, because we look at the capacity of our testing and tracing still below what the WHO recommended, and it should be 4 and 5 time person per 1,000 people should be tested per week. And so that's this current situation, that this situation should be well received or communicate properly to the public, because then they will perceive the risk properly.
Well, Pak Dicky, there are various opinions about how a country should reacting to this kind of move, new measurements and things that are being done in one country. But in your opinion, how can a country determine whether they are ready to change the situation from pandemic to endemic?
Yeah, the answer should be rely on the epidemiological indicators and also the landscape of immunity. So if we talk about the landscape of immunity, should be, if we refer to the Omicron variant, the second dose or the two dose should be near 90% of total population coverage. And the third dose or the booster should be at least 70%, or at least if we choose the very minimum is 50%. That's the situation that we can categorize that country or that region under very good landscape of immunity or modality. And about the epidemiological indicator, as I mentioned before, it should be the test positivity rate should be below 1%. And also the reproduction number should be less than 1 or at least 1, because that's what we call it endemic state. It's no more than 1. But now Indonesia still not reached this situation, and it's mean we have to move. Of course, I understand every country, because we are now already in the third year of pandemic, we have to start our recovery phase, and that's why the government now already have this transition phase. It's okay to have that one, because we need the public also need that one. But we have to remember that we have to do this carefully, and we have to rely on the evidence or the data, and also the how ready the community, the public, the stakeholders in terms of they change their behavior. They change also their, like let's say, if you have Hans and Carol in now in studio, any office, any building after this pandemic, when we move to end of the pandemic, from now on should be changed their quality of air. Their air quality should be strengthened by maybe they use HEPA filter, they use like more ventilation and good circulation. This is something that we have to change. It's like because the COVID-19 spread through the air, and we call it the airborne disease. So it's mean the air quality should be strengthened. It's like when we deal with cholera, it is waterborne disease. 20 maybe in my era, like say 30 years ago, people, it's not easy to have the clean water, but now after MDGs, SDGs, we have to have this access to water. Safe water. So it's similar thing happened for COVID-19.
Yeah, so logistically we have to be ready, and the responsibility of the people itself, like we said before. Let's say there's no more antigen or PCR test for you to travel in a way, but it is our responsibility to do the tracing and testing and treatment also. Now, Indonesia is not the only country, Pak Dicky, that's already having no quarantine and all the regulations with COVID-19 now. Can Indonesia or those countries are already implementing this, no quarantine? Even the European countries, Hans said, go to the severe length to no mask anymore needed. Can this create new variants also in the future, not only in our nation, but those countries and in the world?
Yeah, exactly, Carol. Because as I'm the global health security researcher, and I'm dealing with this health security, global health security for almost 10 years now. So I'm really concerned about the situation in Ukraine, in situation in many countries who lose their criteria and restriction, because for sure the virus still circulate among us, and the new variant, of course, the possibility to have the new variant is still there, because as the DG of WHO also stated yesterday, that we worry that the situation can become almost worse than what we feel now, because we see now, because many countries doesn't have mitigation properly when they lose their restriction. Of course, some countries already have their mitigation strategy. Let's say for US, they don't have a test PCR or rapid test antigen for domestic, even now for the foreigner. But at the at the community level, they strengthen their program or intervention. They call it test and treat, or test to treat, because as Carol mentioned, it's not fully individual responsibility, but the literacy, the individual awareness is increasing. And then when we feel like some symptom, maybe they contact with some positive case, they can go to the pharmacist, and they can get the free test. And when the test result is positive, they can get the free antiviral treatment. That's something that I always say, if the country, let's say, reduce the restriction or reduce the intervention in one aspect, they have to strengthen in the other aspect, because we're still in pandemic. So if we reduce the testing, then we have to also be ready with the treatment, be ready with the early detection. So that's the thing that we have to do. Otherwise, new variant will come, and the hospitalization, like Iris now in Denmark, in Sweden, the number of hospitalization increased. Hong Kong now, because the new variant is now. I can say this one, Carol and Hans. uh, because this loose restriction, we have now two subvariant of Omicron
Wow.
just the last 3 days. BA 2.2, BA 2.3 from Hong Kong, and the other one from UK, I think. So this is something that we don't want to be happen actually in the future, because then if the new variant come with more event to, or more if reducing the efficacy of vaccine, more easy to transmit, so that's become our nightmare, because then we will see more case for mortality and also hospitalization.
Well, Padiki, it's interesting that you were mentioning about Hong Kong and the other countries, but if we take one example from Hong Kong and compare it to Indonesia, it's not going to be an apple to apple, because what Indonesia is working at the moment, like you said, we've been through, correct me if I'm wrong, we've been through the trial and error process to find out what is actually the most suitable way for us to deal with the pandemic. Unlike Hong Kong, who have been, confining their people, their citizens, from all sort of variants, all sort of the things caused by the virus. Now that they don't have what it takes to deal with the pandemic, like better than we do at the moment. Do you think this is also one of Indonesia's, advanced way to deal with the pandemic? So that's why now we are still going on with the trial and error process with shifting from pandemic to endemic.
Yeah, I agree with you, Hans, because this pandemic is the first time in our human history, the biggest one in a modern era, and not single one country prepare well to deal with this pandemic. Even United States, is the number one rank of the global health security index, but then they are in one of the worst country in responding the pandemic. So Indonesia, I can tell, we are in let's say not really good, but not also bad. We are in trial and error, as what the other countries also do. But the good news from Indonesia, we are on track. We are in good progressing to achieving the manageable of this COVID-19, as long as we consistent, we commit in our strategy. And compared to, let's say, Hong Kong, since the beginning of pandemic, they choose the zero case of COVID strategy, which is very difficult, and they do everything they can do to protect their community. And let's say we heard like with China, because Hong Kong under China, right? And then the study is very very strong, and also require a lot of financial support. And the problem with Hong Kong now, many of the elderly people still lack of coverage for the vaccination, and very low. It's not only about booster, but also for the second dose. This situation put them in very prone or vulnerable when dealing with the new variant like Omicron. And the problem the reason why they don't, many of these elderly didn't want to get the vaccine, because they feel like what also some Singaporean elderly also told to the government. They say, we will not go to anywhere, we will not go or travel to abroad. So this is something about the literacy also the problem for many countries to communicate how important the vaccine is. And that's something that I think I have to appreciate also the government, because Indonesia, of course, compared to Hong Kong, is bigger country, and we are not land country. We have many islands and also huge population, but we at least on track and achieve not adequate yet, but around 70% of total population get 2 doses, quite for me amazing
Yeah.
in certain of time. So
Yeah, and it's so good that Padiki and also you, Hans, for giving that appraisal to Indonesia, because we are amongst above one of the 5 countries that has good vaccination program, and also it
yep.
sees, and we are so vastly, we're the fourth most populated people in the world,
Yes.
and for us to
Yes.
can be amongst the big 5,
Yep.
that's already an achievement itself. Now, of course, Padiki, we know that the government right now is aiming towards the endemic, and of course, as
Yep.
the people, we are going to support every government's decision. And how can we, especially we are coming to fasting month coming soon with the next month, and then we have the Eid al-Fitr, as we know, especially beforehand, the mobility is already in high peak.
Oh.
Now, especially with no quarantine, yet alone soon no PCR antigen for domestic travel, how can the government anticipate, and also for the people, what should we do for us to anticipate ourselves to have another wave coming right here in Indonesia?
Yes. First thing that we have to be aware and keep, in our mind that pandemic still around us. I mean, the fight is still around us. Pandemic is not over yet, not over yet. And who can declare pandemic is over? WHO. The WHO will state that this pandemic is over. But when the pandemic is lift up, the status of pandemic lift up by the WHO, actually the country, the region, district, kabupaten, kota in Indonesia will divided by 3 category or level. First, the worst one is endemic. Endemic is the worst one. So that we have to explain that the strategy, the roadmap, it should be not from pandemic to endemic. It should be from pandemic to controlling COVID-19. That's the proper one, the correct one. And the second one, the level is epidemic. Epidemic is like we have the wave, but then that's some plateau situation. That's what we saw in like say dengue fever and others. And the third one, which is what we have to gain or achieve, is sporadic or controllable or manageable of COVID-19. And then after we know this state, of course, when we're dealing with the daily activity and we will face the Ramadan, we know that we have to keep our behavior like 5M, wearing masks and keep distance. It should be there even after the pandemic lift up by the WHO, because we have to realize that this is something that we cannot come back to our previous behavior, because this fire is still there. And also we have to remember also that the loose restriction, it doesn't mean we are safe when we travel. We have to do the what we call it self risk assessment when we do the traveling, when we have a MUDIC, let's say, because we have to also ask ourselves whether whether I already have the booster, whether our family in kampung already have a booster. So or maybe they are in prone or vulnerable situation because they have a cancer, let's say, or immunocompromised. So this self-risk assessment should be there. And of course, there's a duty or responsible of the local government to literate and communicate this aspect to the community. And also then we have to also the let's say the district government should be also prepared for this, let's say, Ramadan, because they have to have let's say the many let's say economical sectors. They have to have the let's say health protocols there. They already changed their daily procedure in terms of the serving the customer, who can address the minimum risk about this virus can be transmitted. any aspect should be also have their change in terms of this minimize the risk. And also again, uh, I, I I I will not ban or again the moody activities, but I should remind us that this is still in pandemic,
Yep.
and if you can stay at home, that's a better for
Just say it
for
all.
you
Yes.
and for your family.
Yes.
But if you then you decided to go home or to do the mudik,
Yeah.
you have to do the best you can do to protect your family, in also in your kampung.
Yes.
That's that you have to do.
Like
Thank
what
you.
Carol just said during this show, that we have to be responsible for ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Bapak Dicky, thank you very much for your time. It's always very insightful to have a discussion with you. Stay safe in Australia, Pak Dicky, and hopefully we'll talk to you with you again very soon. A very great morning to you, Pak Dicky.
Thanks for having me, Carol and Hans.
Thank you. Good
Bye-bye.
morning.